And welcome into the Young Dad Podcast. Whether you're outside grilling, mowing the lawn, changing dirty diapers, or maybe, just maybe, you got a moment to sit back, relax, and listen to your favorite podcast, wherever you're at, whatever you're doing. Thanks for being here, and thanks for tuning in. Today, I'm joined by Dr. John, literally just told me his last name, Kanaka. I probably just butchered that, but it's fine. I'm not good with names. Even
Chanaca, it's close enough,
Chanaca,
okay, Jay? Yeah.
even though he just told me, it's fine. A licensed family counselor, veteran educator, and founder of MJ Chanaca Publishing, a company devoted to wholesome, values-based children's books and parenting tools. With over 42 years of experience teaching and counseling in schools, he's also the author of Power Parenting, the Super Student series, and the Family Value series, which are helping families raise resilient, character-driven kids in a distracted world. So make sure you grab your juice box, grab a snack, and let's jump right in. John, thanks so much for joining me today, and welcome to the show.
Good morning, Jay. Good morning. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course, but your journey has spanned classrooms, counseling rooms, publishing houses, but at the heart of it all is family. How did you get into, the publishing books, going from being in the classroom to counseling to all over the place that you were? How did you get into all of it?
Well, everyone has a special journey, Jay. That's what's so wonderful about the guests that you have on and listeners and all. Everyone's life is different. And in our particular situation, Jane and I, we had two sons, and we started out in Pennsylvania, wound up in South Carolina, 42 years in the classroom and doing all kinds of things, teaching in the elementary schools, all the grades, and being a counselor and administrator, and meeting lots and lots and lots of parents and children, of course. But at the end of that ride, that 42-year ride, we found ourselves enjoying life and traveling and enjoying our grandchildren. We have three grandchildren. And we ran into COVID. And along with COVID, my mother-in-law, who was 92 at the time, came to live with us. So she stayed with us. We were in COVID, and she was wheelchair bound and was starting with dementia. And so we found ourselves taking care of her and being involved in COVID. And we started to think back on our life and some of the wonderful things that had happened with our children and stories and so on. And so we started to come up with, why don't we write these stories down for legacy? I think today we're going to talk a little bit about legacy. I think that's important. What are you going to leave the world? What are you doing when you're raising your children? Young Dad's podcast. You've got young children and so on. What kind of memories, what kind of stories, what kind of impressions, what kind of life do you want to leave your kids? And so we decided to come up with books. First, my own son, youngest son, Joel, came up with a story that he thought was real interesting. And in fact, it's right here. Patches the Cat as a Thief. And that was the first book that we published. He wrote it. We started to learn about how to produce books and deal with illustrators and all the rest. And before we know it, we had 15, 16 books published and started to get into other things like parenting stuff. So that's how it started. It was during that COVID time and a time where we couldn't go anyplace, but we started to reminisce, what could we leave our children? And so we came up with lots of different books.
Thing.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Yeah, it's I think that's something that I just put out a video over. Well, this is just a few days after Father's Day that we're recording this here, and on Father's Day, I had put out a video on my YouTube channel. I went live at like 11:45 Saturday night, and then went into the early minutes of Father's Day the next morning, and I was honestly reminiscing and having a lot of the same conversations. Is what is that, that thing that I feel like we're missing sometimes? What are those things that keep us up, that we end up thinking about later in life, right? That bring us back to thinking, kind of about what you're saying right now. About, what am I gonna leave behind? What memories am I leaving behind? What things am I are the things that I what things are the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, but did, or the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, but didn't? Where are the things that I wish I did differently or did better or changed or could have done but didn't do, or the time that I could have spent but I didn't spend, or the time where I worked too late and missed the thing or did the thing and did the thing kind of thing, and all that constant. that constant narrative that's in our head as fathers and whatnot. And so for you, I guess personally, especially with, going from the classroom, working with lots of kids, raising your own kids, and, being an active grandparent in your kid's life, you know, what
That's right.
what has been the focus, or what was the focus as you were raising your own kid over the years?
Well, it's a good question, and I'm glad Father's Day just, as you said, just left us, and so it's a good time to kind of think back on those things. I need to say that Jane and I have been married for 55 years. We had,
Congrats.
as I
It's a
said,
great.
two sons. They have children. We all kind of live in the same neighborhood too, so we do see our grandchildren and our children often. Uh, Especially Joel, who's working in this publishing company with us. The one son is a physical therapist, so he's very busy. And the other son is a DNR officer. He's a game warden. He was in police law enforcement now for almost 25, 30 years. So they're all very busy in their lives and so on. But one thing that constantly comes out in Jane and our marriage, and the way we we hope that our children are raising their children, our grandchildren, is that there's a balance. Okay, it's a bunch of balancing acts. You know, you have to work, you have to be involved with other things. There's things that demand your time. But if you are neglecting your children, your family, your wife, you're going to suffer. Okay. You're good. That's part of the legacy thing we're talking about. If you're spending most of your time working, making money, spending time with your friends, going out with various activities that you have, and you're not spending time with your family, you're not enjoying time with your family, you're going to have a problem. Okay. You're going to have a long term problem, and it's going to come back and bite you. We did spend a lot of time with our boys, and we were very busy. Jane and I were both busy. We were both educators. We did have the summers off, but many times I would be working or going to school during the summer. So, yeah, I know all about balance and time that takes away from you and how it can creep up on you and everything else. But you need to stop and think often. Okay, once a week isn't too much. Where's my balance? Am I spending too much time here, there? Or am I not spending enough time with my kids, my wife? Do I have enough private time? It's all about balancing and having a good belief system, strategies, and then just love. I guess love is the thing that guides you. If you're not in this for love, you've got a problem. Okay. If you don't have anyone loving you and you're not loving, you got a problem. You can't be happy. It's
Yeah,
impossible.
yeah, I would
And a
agree with
lot of
that.
that's missing. Everyone's very busy. Kids are busy. Families are busy. And they're all busy. But get back to the Young Dads podcast. It's a father's job, obviously, along with the mother, of course, the spouse, the other significant other that's living with you. But the father, you have a big responsibility in directing that. And how much time have we spent this week together? We need some private time. We need some time with the children. We need to maybe take a vacation. Let's get away and do this. Or maybe we need to go down to the park with the kids and just watch them ride down the slide and use the swings. Maybe go for a walk. It's a priority thing. You have to direct that. You have to decide these things. That's very important, extremely important.
Yeah,
That's the biggest
absolutely.
problem we're running into today. Too much going on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot, right? There's a lot, and I even talked about this in my Father's Day message that I put out, that there was so much even going on this last weekend. We don't gotta get into all of it, but there was
Right.
protests and parades, and there was the start of a war, there was, people being bombed, and there was just so much going on, right? And then the other things that go on during the month of June that just overshadow it, right? And then you think about what Father's and Mother's Day is and what they mean, and they're just often overshadowed. And then even specifically thinking of Father's Day being in June is also Men's Mental Health Month. That's also overshadowed. It's also Veterans Awareness Month, and that's also overshadowed by other things. And these things just take a lesser and lesser place in society, while the demands on men raise and raise. And so then, you know, the there's all these demands on men, but there's really little to no appreciation going around for the men, yet so much is expected of them, and there's just so much else, other outside influences on top of that, and it's hard to
You
see
know,
that
you
there's
have
little
to worry
appreciation.
about the things. You have to be concerned about the things you can control, though, Jay. I think that's important. Okay. There's so many things going on, like you said, in the world and in your community and all the rest, but you have to deal with what's in front of you. And that usually is your children, your wife, your family. Okay, family is everything, and that's what you need to deal with. Sure, you have to deal with your work too, your employer, your boss, the people you're dealing with there. But that's a part of the day. And so many times people neglect that, and when they come home, they're exhausted, and then home is just a mess. The kids are yelling, screaming, they feel neglected, they're not involved. Home should be a place of refuge. It should be a place where you recuperate, you regenerate. It's not a place where you get beat up. You're getting beat up in the world. Your boss is telling you this and that. You have job, you have all kinds of things that you got to meet, deadlines and all the rest, because you have to produce something. And when you come home, that's the time for you to recharge, to rejuvenate, for building each other up, building your wife up, being built up, being your children up, encouraging one another. That's a refuge place. It's a little cleft in the rock, if you want to say. But so many times it's not. You're getting beat up at home too. And a lot of dads will admit that. They say, gee, I go to work and I get beat up and I come home and it's not any better. And so they feel like they got to go out with the boys, go down to the bar, get to do this, and run around, watch a ball game, shut things out, and so on. So, been there, did that. Okay, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I feel even with that, like, a lot of men, I feel like that's what you're talking about here, getting beat up at home. I think that's been created by a lot of the social media influence, right? To where it's like it's trendy for women to take videos and beat up on their men. Not, like, physically necessarily, but to do things that are, mind games, or to say certain things, or to get a reaction, or to do a certain thing, or to act a certain way, just to, get under their man's skin. There's a lot of social media trends that are that way, and I think a lot of them, quite frankly, are really stupid. They're just really stupid. It's like, why are you just bringing that into your home? Why are you bringing that energy in here? Why are you doing that? Like, what's the point? Other than you're just kinda you're hurting your marriage. At the end of it, you're hurting your relationship by doing that stupid stuff, and there's really no place for it. And then I saw a video on top of that. There's a, there's this video I watched. It was a pastor, uh, on TikTok, and he's a really good pastor. He's really loud, but he's really, passionate about what he does when he preaches. It's from the different church. Dude has, like, blonde hair, tattoos. He's just so different the way he preaches and whatnot, but he was talking about video games. He's talking about men in video games, and he talked about, "When I play this game, I'm appreciated. When I play this game, I'm celebrated. Everything I do is celebrated, rewarded. Everything I do is awesome. Everything I do is great. There's nothing I can't do in this game that doesn't make me great." And, you know, when I disappear for hours into the game, I'm appreciated. It's the one place, even at home, that I'm appreciated. And I think that's why a lot of men, go into these. I can think about it from my first marriage and go back and think of all the time I spent on, creating content, or podcasting, or making videos, or playing video games, or things like that, because it was like the few things that I could do to where I had some refuge, to where I actually had that refuge
Celebrating.
that you're talking about.
Sure.
Yeah, where I was celebrated, or people engaged with me. Yes, there was some mean comments and whatnot, but nothing compared to what I was receiving, more so, and I was appreciated, I was celebrated, I was, I there was good things coming from it. But then as soon as I was done with that, then, the berating began again, kinda thing, and it was just that constant cycle. And I think a lot more men that wanna admit it are in that cycle. Uh, and there's a lot of it that's coming from social media. I think social media, and that influence, because it goes back to what you put in, you put out. So if these women are taking in all these trends and whatnot from all these female influencers, and they have an influence, right? Then that's what they're putting out into their homes. That's what they're putting out toward their husbands. That's what they're putting out into their relationships. Is this negativity, or this toxicity, or these trends, which are actually incredibly toxic to their actual relationships, and they think it's funny and cute and ha ha ha. And women can play all these games, and it's like, whoa, like, That's not cool. That's not okay. But it's justified. It's
Mhm.
justified. It's always justified in some way, shape, or form, and but if a man does it, you flip the seat, you flip the coin, you know what I'm saying? If a man does it, then it's bad, it's abusive, it's all this stuff, but if a woman does it, we live in that double standard.
Right. Well, you're bringing up an important point that we probably even should have said from the beginning. In a marriage, it takes two people to make the marriage.
Mhm.
And so if you have a spouse who is not, into this, she wants to do her own thing and she's not really interested in you and then, or the children and so on. That's a difficult, difficult situation to be in. There's no doubt about it. Well, especially if you start saying, I got to spend more time with my wife. I want to spend more time with my children. I'm out of balance here. I'm on video games all the time, or I'm on YouTube, or I'm always occupied with other things. I've got to take a refocus. And you take an active, engagement to try to make that change, but you have a spouse who is not willing, doesn't want to do it, and so on. Then you run into a block, then you have to decide, what in the world am I doing? You mentioned spiritual aspect, and that's really important because the truth of the matter is we're all guided by some kind of spiritual kind of involvement. You have a purpose in life. You should be doing things that are good, worthwhile, lasting. You have children, other people you're taking care of, and so on. And so you start to think about this legacy business again. And so that's got to be the overriding thing, though, is that, how am I acting? Who am I serving? Where is this going to go? These children are going to grow up. They're going to be adults. They're going to want to engage with me later on or not. Like, for example, I have a grandson who's 20 years old. He's going to be going to Clemson next year for his third year in engineering. This summer, he's in Savannah doing an apprenticeship, and he still calls us, talks to us in the evening, about his day and everything else. So, but that doesn't come unless I would have taken time, and Jane would have taken time with spending time with him and the family doing things together. If we had no contact, no involvement, he has no memories, no good things that we have done together where he can see I was selfless and I was involved with him and I did things with him and for him. And, he wouldn't care. What the heck would he call me up for? That's a waste of time. What am I going to call him for? Parenting is a long game. I like to compare it to golf. Have you ever golfed, Chad? Do you
Once or
golf?
twice. I'm not very good.
Okay. Well,
No,
some of the guys
I've
out
gone
there, I'm
once or
sure, are
twice, but
golfers.
I'm not very good.
Well, golf is an interesting game, okay? And I like to compare parenting when I've been writing and talking about parenting for quite a few years. In fact, I did Christian marriage and family counseling. Golf is a game where you get lots of chances, lots and lots and lots of chances. It's not like skating, the people who do ice skating and so on, they get out on the ring, it's a big tournament and so on, they practice for months and months and months, and they have 5 minutes, to do their thing, and they get out there in a minute and a half, they fall down. That's it. They're finished. They're not going to win that tournament, okay? But parenting's not like that. And even relationship with your wife and so on. And we're talking about men's podcast here, but I'm sure there's women out there. Your spouse, you have time, chance, and chance, and chance, and chance, and chance to get it right. And in golf, you get on the first hole and you hit the ball and it goes into the woods. Okay, well, the game is not over. It's not finished. You can go down there, try to find the ball and hit it out again, or you can put another ball out and hit it. So next time it goes into the sand trap and it is still not over. You hit it and it goes on. So you could have a bad hole, a bad first hole, and you got the next hole is coming up. Okay, you got another chance. You always have another chance in golf. It's always new and exciting, and every swing is different. That's the way life is. So you don't give up the first time, okay? You look for other advantages, you reevaluate, you reset, and you start again. So all the mistakes you've made as a father, or as a husband, or as a wife, whatever, you can work on that. You can forget those mistakes, learn from them, but they're in the past. There's nothing you can do about the past. It's finished. You're living in the moment right now. It's very existential, okay? This moment you have right now with me, this is live, okay? So that's the only thing that really counts. And the future, as you what you're doing now does affect the future. So you take it one day at a time, one step at a time, and you realize that you get chance after chance. You make a mistake with your kids, say you're sorry. Say, I'm sorry, I said that. It was wrong. I lied, I did this, I swore, I said I shouldn't have done that. I made a mistake, and I want you to forgive me. That's very, very important in marriage. Asking for forgiveness. Now, sometimes you'll get it from your children. They'll forgive you. They are on and on. Children are wonderful. Believe me, I worked with 42 years with kids. I've seen them abused, all kinds of things. They love their parents. The parents beat them up and they love them. So, what I'm trying to say to you is that you have lots of chances. Keep trying, stay focused, realize there's a long game here. It's not a short game, it's a marathon. Take it one day at a time. But without spiritual kind of help, God being involved in your life, having a focus and a purpose for life, it makes it harder, okay? It just makes it harder. When you believe that God loves you and cares for you and has a purpose for your life, it changes the way you act. It changes your focus. And that's what we talk about in power parenting a lot. The 6 beliefs, 6 strategies you need to know as a parent to nurture your child and have them be successful students, really. I took a student approach, but how you can change as you go along with your kids, learning with your kids as they grow. It's a wonderful experience. We didn't talk about this, Jay, but do you have children?
I do, yeah. I think it would be kind of weird if I was doing a podcast about parent or about dad and stuff, and I didn't have kids.
I was going to
Personally,
say,
I
how
think that
many
I think it's kind of weird when there's people that do like a podcast on a topic, but they don't really have a
experience?
background, like a background or experience, but they make it seem like they do. Like if I was to do a mental health podcast, but I am just like a mental health I think mental health is something different, but if I was just like a mental health like advocate or enthusiast, more or less, versus having the experience I do, because I have my master's in developmental psychology kind of thing, and I'm a master's level mental health provider. So like I think it would be kind of weird if I did a podcast, but I didn't have that experience kind of thing. Like it would
You're
invalidate me.
you're
So same for here
exactly
for being
right.
a dad.
Yeah,
I think there's a
very,
lot of
very
people
good.
out there that get into a lot of things and they become quote unquote coaches for things because they don't actually have the real experience and they've learned enough to, create some kind of coaching program that's very short and short-sighted, that's very one size their approach is this size is gonna fit everybody when it's gonna fit very few kind of thing. But that's just my opinion on that. But yes, to answer your question, yes, I do have kids. I have 2 kids. I have an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old.
No, there you go. There you go. So you're right in the middle of it, okay? That's extremely important age right there. And so then, you're speaking from your heart when you talk about dad business and kids and
Yes.
they're crying, upset, or being sick, or not being able to do certain things in school, or run into teachers that are difficult. And so these are the kinds of things you go through as a father. And you're right. We're all in the thick of it. And if you don't have those experiences, you don't know what we're talking about. It's a different world. You're taking a different language here.
Yep, absolutely. So it's just one of those things to where you you either know or you don't know. And either way is it's like you're saying here, it's just one of those things. You either know or you don't know. And that's just kind of where it's at. And that's okay.
Exactly.
And if you don't know, then this even though this show has a lot of elements that are for a lot of different people, but no, I think a dad needs to hear it from another dad, and that goes back to just the whole concept of it's a psychological thing. Like I've talked to one thing that I have done in the past. I think I've only done it a couple times, but one thing that I've done in the past, and I kind of wish I didn't do those interviews, in hindsight now, kind of looking back, and some that I ended up canceling even were some with women who claimed they were experts on men. I'm like, you can't be an expert on as on men if you're not a man. Kind of thing. You can't be an expert on fatherhood if you're not a father, kind of thing, because there's a
Yeah,
missing
right.
element there, like you don't have the same part. You can do all the research and all the things you want, but but you don't have my experience being a man. You don't have my experience being a biracial man kinda thing. And so only I can speak to those things. You cannot, because that's not how it works.
Exactly. But so it's a journey, and it's a wonderful journey, okay? Because there's all
Absolutely.
kinds of pluses. We talk about some of the difficulties and so on, but our children
I
and our
think
grandchildren are just wonderful.
yeah, I was texting one of my longtime, mentors. He's been a mentor of mine since I was, like, 15, kind of a second dad to me as well, for a very, very, very long time. And I texted him Happy Father's Day, we were texting a little bit, uh, and he said, "I hope you're enjoying being a dad. For me, it's the most meaningful, challenging, critical growth experience of my existence." And I said, "I think it's the biggest risk you take as a man, but with the biggest payout ever." And I said, "I can honestly say that I've learned more and grown more in the last 8 years than I had in my first 22 years of life." Because I became a dad at 22. And he said, "I'm convinced it's a key piece of our evolution to complete the circle of life growth and experience the child, then the parent, then ideally the parent of a parent perspective." And that's, I think, the grandparenting and whatnot. His kids don't have kids yet, um, kind of thing. He has 4 kids. I grew up with them. We're not as close as we once were, but kind of fell up over the years. But none of his kids have kids yet. I think there's probably one or two of the four that will have kids. The other two, I'm just really not sure. But that's, it's a numbers game, right? So,
For sure.
um,
And kids are not for everyone either, by the way. That's
yeah.
important too. I mean,
Well, I think it goes
you
back to the risk. I think it goes back to the risk, honestly. There's a couple risks you have to take as a man, right? And I think I've heard Patrick Bet David say this before on the PBD podcast several times. I'm quoting him on this. He said, "It's a big risk for men not to have kids, but it's no, it's a big risk for men to have kids, but it's a bigger risk for them not to have kids." Kind of thing. So it's a big risk to get married and to have kids, but it's a bigger risk to not get married and to not have kids. Because I think that won't tell you that it was something good for them that ended up being something really good and really great for them in the end. I think you gotta do it because, like my mentor said, it's one of those things that really just completes your evolution as a man. It really completes your brain. It changes how you work. It changes how you function. It changes how you go about business. It changes how you make your decisions. It changes how you act. It changes how you take care of yourself. It changes literally the whole physiology of who you are, especially when you have daughters. It literally changes your testosterone levels. It literally changes your brain. So it's a massive change. And yes, all things considered, maybe there's diagnosis or developmental things or disabilities or things like that to where people, those some people you got to find a woman, and a lot of women don't want to do it because
yeah,
again they're
yeah.
so polarized in our society. They're the hyper feminine movement, the far feminine movement, the over progressive feminine movement. You can call it so many different things, but it's just that to where it's killed that desire for young women to start families, to get married, to raise a family, to raise kids, to where it's like appalling and it's not attractive and it's not what you want to do and it's not something you should be doing. It's not something you should want to do, to where it's become a lot of the opposite to versus where it was probably when you and your wife first started out, to where it was more commonplace, it was more encouraged, it was more, normal. But now it's just like these women, these girls are just told, go and be go and be a boss, go and have your career, go to school, go and travel, go and live your life. And then, you know, think about it when you're, in your mid 30s. But gosh, for a lot of these girls, they think about it in their mid 30s and I don't want to say they're past their prime by any means, because mid 30s is still a fine age to have kids. But I mean, you just got to think about it, and it's going to be harder. It's going to be genetically harder, or not genetically harder, but it's going to be biologically harder to have the children as you get older, for men and for women. Um, the risk that you take is higher for uh, not defects, but for possible developmental delays, intellectual delays, physical ailments, things like that. The risk is just so much higher as you get older. Uh, and plus, you're older, and you're only gonna get older. If you have your first kid at 38, you're gonna be, you know, let's say 20, you're gonna be 58, 56 by the time your kid graduates high school, and, you know, gonna feel kinda old. Gonna feel kinda
Yeah.
old. I feel really young in most of the when I'm around kids or, parents at my school with my kids, I'm like, "I'm kinda the kinda the youngest one here." Like, "Dang." Kinda thing when I look around the classroom and look around at the other parents in the same grade, I'm like, "I'm kinda a lot younger than a lot of these parents over here. What am I doing here?" So, just one of those things.
The thing with marriage, of course, is the commitment. If you're a selfish person, and you can't be married and be selfish, okay? So
No,
that's what you're giving up when you're married is self. You can't be married to someone, and even it gets worse with children, okay? And be selfish. So if you are afraid of that commitment, afraid of being selfless, afraid of sharing yourself, afraid of sacrificing yourself in a sense, doing for others, doing for your spouse, doing for your children, and so on, because you shouldn't get married. Okay, number one. And if you're in a marriage and you're like that, you better learn how to be more selfless. And there has to be a reason for you to do that because you're saying you want me to do this for her and she did that to me and you want me to take time and do things with these kids when I've got a life to live and I want to do what I want to do.
but you don't go
That's
to that
where
point.
the
You
rubber meets the
you
road.
gotta yeah, you give that up when you get married, right? You give that up. You give up
Give it up
that
to the
sense of self.
point where, yeah, you can't, when two people are living together, there's always compromise. You're always thinking of what, is she sick or should I help? Maybe I better do the dishes and she's not feeling well. Well, if you're by yourself, you don't care. You don't have to think about that. You do the dishes when you want to do your dishes and no one's there. You don't have to care about someone else. When you're caring for someone else, whether it's your wife or your children or your mother-in-law or whoever it might be, you're giving of yourself. You're being a servant. You're being selfless. And that's what bothers a lot of people. They don't want to do that.
Yeah, because I
So then
think
don't get
our
married. And
society
then
is
if you
trained
can't
that
do it with one person, don't have children then, okay? If you can't even
absolutely.
do it with one person, or if that's all you want to do it with, okay, is one person.
Yeah.
That's where it can, but in the same way that you are selfless and you're helpful and you're loving and you're kind and you're a servant, you're going to get that many blessings back, okay? It comes back
Absolutely.
to you. That's the wonderful part. Okay, those blessings aren't just thrown out there. Your bread does come back when you cast it on the water. Okay,
Absolutely.
so yeah, and that's the struggle that parents are in. And I think you have to start with the belief system. Okay, you have to believe that you were put here on this earth for a reason. You're in this situation for a reason, and what are you going to do with it? What choices you're going to make, decisions you're going to make this thing work. And you want to be happy. Who wants to go around being sad, upset, and discouraged all the time with life? It's a terrible thing. That's bad mental health right there, Jay.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think our society and I think the impact of social media has, got to the point to where we celebrate selfishness. You know, we celebrate a woman, making a mockery of Men's Mental Health Month by saying, "When is my turn to take a moment for men's mental health?" and playing a loud song and dancing around and obviously, portraying not being quiet. And then that's celebrated. That's celebrated on the internet. That's a selfish act. We don't see that. We see that as, "Oh, look at that person, they're making a joke or they're being funny or something," but that's being selfish. That's portraying that women don't care about men's mental health and that we have to take care of ourselves, and it creates more of that divide. It creates more of that tension. It makes men think, okay, if that's how a woman is, then I don't want anything to do with that. Or as a woman, it's like, yeah, screw men's mental health kind of thing. And it creates more of that divide and it pulls us further apart. There's so much in our society today that's meant to pull us apart, but then to also celebrate the selfishness. It's celebrated. It's constantly celebrated. The more selfish you are, the better.
Exactly.
But when it comes
Exactly.
time to put up or shut up, it's like, "Oh, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I can give that up," kind of thing. But it's like, and then people will say, "Oh, it's the commitment. It's the fear of the commitment." I'm gonna call BS on that. 'Cause I want people to look at reevaluate their lives. What other things are you committed to? Are you committed to your friendships? Probably. Are you committed to your family? Probably. Are you committed to your job? More or less, right? But you make commitments all the time. You commit to a routine, you commit to going to the gym, you commit to a year-long contract here. Heck, you're most people are committed to their car lease for 5 years kind of thing, or their car payment for 4, 5, 6 years. Heck, they're committed to their house payment for 30 years. So don't tell me it's the fear of commitment to when you lock in these other things and do these other things, which require also a commitment of some type. It's just you're selfish and you're unwilling to work through that because, like you're saying here, and I'm going to hit on that, is because you don't have that value system. You don't have that belief system. You don't have that thing that's driving you forward because you don't understand the true purpose on what you were put on this earth for. You don't understand
But
how
that's the
great you
point.
actually are,
That's the point.
kind of thing.
That's exactly the point. If you believe your purpose on this earth is to get as much pleasure, money, and selfish kind of feelings, well, that's the way you're going to live. If you believe that, no, that's not my purpose. I see when I do things for others, when I'm a servant, when I'm helpful, when I'm loving and kind, I'm not only helping other people, but I do get blessings for that. I feel good inside that I've helped some other people. So yeah, it's a focus. I love what Jesus said about this. He did a lot of talking about selfishness and so on, but you should love your neighbor as yourself. Just think about that. Loving other people, all colors, all races, as you love your own self. And then, of course, he gave the demonstration of the Samaritan, who helped that injured person on the road. All the religious people walked around him and didn't want to do anything. But when the Samaritan came upon him, he picked him up. He helped him with his wounds. He took him to the inn. He took care of him. Okay, he was selfless. He wasn't selfish. He was helpful. So who's your neighbor? Anybody that you
Everybody,
meet.
everybody. And
Yeah, no, obviously in your family, that's the most important people that you have. So if that wife of yours needs help with the dishes, do the dishes. If she's sick, not feeling well, do that. If you make breakfast for her, do what you need to do to help out everything you can. And then your children, they need you in all kinds of ways. Besides feeding them and buying them clothes, they need to be loved and listened to and talked to and taken places and appreciated as a person, just in their own way. And they have gifts. So these are the kinds of things that, young dads and moms are struggling with every day. But it has to do with balance and focus, selflessness and commitment to the task, what you're doing, what you're about, who you are. You're developing, though, you're changing. And remember that long game. Parenting and your life is a long game. You have a lot of room to change, and you can do that.
yep. And I think it's ironic, right? To where the whole treat love your neighbor as thyself and the parable of the Good Samaritan and how something that simple is love your neighbor as yourself gets twisted into uh, a narrative, especially during the month of June, that love wins. It's like, well, no, actually, Jesus won. And then people are calling, I don't know if you're familiar with baseball at all, but two MLB athletes, Brandon Nimmo, an outfielder for the Mets, and then Clayton Kershaw, one of the greatest pitchers of all time for the Dodgers, and just one of the best ever to do it. Probably, in my opinion, a top 10 guy kind of guy, future Hall of Famer, first ballot. I'm gonna guarantee it myself because I think Clayton Kershaw has been that good. Take all the playoff stuff away, but the performance on the field during the regular season is unbeatable, unmatched for Clayton Kershaw. But regardless, Brandon Nimmo had worn a shirt that said Jesus won. And then Clayton Kershaw during the Dodgers Pride Night, because there's still all 29 of the 30 MLB teams to have a Pride Night of some kind. He put the reference from Genesis right by the Dodgers logo, referencing the rainbow and how God owns the rainbow. And then there's people on social media calling these two gentlemen bitches and that they're marginalizing a whole group of people. It's like they're expressing their belief and they're telling you the truth. They're telling you the true meaning of these phrases and this captured language. And that's where our society's at. It's like, if you're not with me, you're against me. If you're not fully tolerating every part of me, you're against me. It's like, no, no, I can still tolerate you and I can still love you, but I don't have to agree with you on all these things. I don't have to be with you on all these things. I can still love you and tolerate you. And if you really needed my help and you were down, I would still help you. I would still take you to get the care you needed. I would still help you at the end of the day. But that does not mean I'm going to fully, accept, and you can't shove your tolerance and shove you down my throat, because I can't do that kind of thing. And so we we can still love people. We can still love people. We can still be there for people. We can still be loving and kind, but that does not mean I'm against you. I can still love you for the person that you were wholly created to be, as Jesus made you, as a creator made you, as a whole man or a whole woman. I can still love you as that, as a whole human being, but I do not have to accept the beliefs that you carry that are untrue, that aren't,
Exactly.
that are created by man, for man. They're not created by God for
Love the
man.
sinner and hate the sin. Really,
Exactly.
that's really comes down to it. But
Exactly.
yeah, and because we're all sinners. I mean, you're not talking to a guy here who didn't have problems,
Our kids are
during
the
our
biggest sinner.
marriage or
Our
having
kids are
make mistakes. Or we all do that. We all make mistakes, have problems, and anyone says they have a perfect life or they're an expert on this, they've done everything perfect. They're crazy. Okay.
they're full
So
of crap.
yeah,
They're full of
and
shit.
Christ is the example. There's no doubt about it. I mean, he had every right to put everyone down. Jesus did because he was perfect, but he didn't. He sat there and loved on people, okay, and listened to them and experienced with compassion, their problems and their thoughts and so on. So yeah, what an example! What an example of servanthood too, and unselfishness. Okay, that's the biggest one. If you're a follower of Christ, which again helps a lot, you'll know that, Christ did it all. He paid for your sin and he loves you, cares for you. So that's what drives, families. And the more you're involved in those kinds of things and thoughts, it drives your parenting and sticks you fast to a goal. You get lost sometimes. You do. Get lost in the world. You get lost with various things that are happening in the world, and you get upset. People do crazy things to you too. They're upset because we all have problems. Your wife feels down, your kid's upset, they're being bullied in school, or they've got somebody chasing them, or the teacher they feel doesn't like them, or whatever. So, everyone's got problems and situations. Just kind of think about where they're coming from. Okay. What are they going through? That's really important.
Yeah, and I think there's no greater truth, right? There's no greater example than how a father can love the son than we have in the Bible. There's no greater example than that. There's no greater thing to strive for as parents, and
Exactly.
gratefully we have so many examples within the Bible of these parent child relationships, and what they mean, and so many examples of how we treat other people, and where Jesus steps in and says, hey, we are so quick as people, as human beings, as fallen men and women, to look around and be like, "Oh, I'm gonna cast a stone here. I'm gonna cast a stone here. I'm gonna cast a stone here because I'm better than you. I'm better than you. I'm better than you. I'm better than you." But it's like at the end of the day, we're really not. We're really not. But we're so quick to
No, we're
cast the
not.
stone. We're so quick to cast the stone.
Yeah.
But we
Yeah.
and not enough people know, like, let him who was without sin cast the first stone. And everyone put down their stones and walked away. Everyone put down their stones and walked away, because they all realize I'm not without sin. And we always have Jesus standing up for us in that moment, right? We always have him there. And I think that's very reminiscent of a parent as well, is to step up in these same situations with our kids. I think we can flip the script there, as put yourself as Jesus there, but with your kid. When the world
Exactly.
and society is casting stones at your kid, or ready to cast stones at your kid, be like, hold on, hold on, hold on. How many of you guys were kids? How many of you guys were kids? How many of you guys made mistakes? How many of you guys made the same mistake when you were a kid? And I feel like our expectations of our children, especially, well, as they get older, our expectations change and whatnot. But I feel like we're very quick to, and myself included, I'm guilty of this, because we're imperfect people, but myself included in this, being guilty, is we're very quick to cast out the judgment. We're very quick to cast the stones, even on our own kids, when we are supposed to be the ones there to stop the stones from being
Exactly.
casted onto our kids.
The story that comes to mind for me is the prodigal son, probably one of the best stories,
Mhm.
how he, abused his father and took his money, went away to a different country, and then, of course, lost it all, spent all the money on prostitutes and riotous living, and was, wound up feeding pigs, which was something unbelievable for a Jewish boy to do.
Mhm.
And he said, if I can only go home to my father, I'll be a servant. I don't care what, everything's got to be better than this. I left my father and I need to return to him. And of course, look at the father's reaction when he saw him coming down the road.
He's so
He
happy.
runs to him and puts his arm around him. He hugs him. He puts his coat around him. He celebrates. And that's what's so amazing. That's the way God is. We talk about Father's Day, and a lot of people out there, a lot of guys out there were listeners probably thought, no, I had a rotten father. I had a terrible father. I had Father's Day. Well, you can be the best father you can be, okay? You can change that, and you do have a father in heaven, Father God, okay, that is that kind of father, is that perfect father. So you do have a father, okay? And he loves you and cares for you so much that he sent his son Christ to die for you. So yeah, all of this plays into parenting and your view on life and the way you treat others. All these things do matter.
Mhm. And
There's no doubt
it
about
all
it.
leads back, it all leads back, right? It all leads back to Christ at the end of it, right? All the things we do, all the legacy that we wanna live and everything that we wanna leave behind, I think all comes back to the values that we gain from trying to leave a Christ-led and a Christ-centered life, at the end of it. Because there's no greater legacy that we can leave behind for our kids is that of a an example that is Christ-like, that is filled with the fruits of the Spirit, the patience, the kindness, the respect.
All right. But we need to say something here. It's very important. Can you have a loving family without Christ? And the answer is yes, you
Yes,
can.
but
And that's interesting because God.
I think
I'm
there's a
sorry.
but that needs to be added here. I think there's a but. Yes, you can. You can have all that, right? You can have a loving family. You can have a really good experience in this life without Christ. But I truly believe and I truly know that you will always feel like there's something missing. There's always will be a desire for something
Oh,
more still because that's man, right? That's the
absolutely
flesh wanting more. It's like everything could be happy,
right.
sunshine, roses,
Well,
cows,
it's interesting.
food, but we're always
Yeah,
going to be missing something. You're always going to be missing something.
it's interesting you say that because the Bible even tells us that we love because He first loved us. So everyone has the capability of love. Okay, that's part of your spirit that's inside you, that is congruent with God. Okay, that's the spirit that He has in you. Okay, because we are born of God, we have that spirit of love, to be loved, and to give love and share love. And so that's important. But you're right. The greatest act of love that we know is that God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, Jesus Christ, that whosoever believeth in him should have everlasting life, okay, spiritual life. So it's through Christ we not only see God working and God's love, but yeah, that's the part you're talking about that lasts forever, the spiritual part. But there are families, Muslim families, okay? There are people who have no religious affiliation, okay? They might call themselves spiritual and so on, but they love their children, they love their wives, and so on. But that love comes from God. That's where it comes from. It doesn't come from you, basically, okay? You basically don't have any good stuff to give. Any good stuff you have comes from God. So, yeah, I agree with you totally, Jay.
And I think the people that are experiencing that, that don't have Christ, that don't have God, I think they're happy, right? They're happy, but they're not experiencing happiness. And I think that's the best way to describe the difference here. Because with God, with Christ, you experience happiness. You experience the fullness
It's a
of
different
that.
right. It's a different release. It's a different freedom. That's what we're talking about. As I said, Muslim, Jewish families, other people, and so on, they love their families, okay? You can't, there's evidence of this over in the world of families loving each other. It doesn't matter where you come from, but that love comes from God. But you're right, when you start talking about Christ and what he did on the cross, all of a sudden there's a different kind of release, a freedom where you realize how thankful you should be for your life and just what it means. So, parenting is, again, wonderful challenge, beautiful adventure and journey. And we were able to write a lot about it in some of the things that we're producing. If I could share a couple of those things, Jay, I'd like to just really quickly.
Yeah.
Power
Um,
Parenting,
yeah, go ahead.
which will be coming out in the fall. We have a course and a book that will be coming out. The course is called Power Parenting, and we're going to do the first 5 belief systems that we have for that. Beliefs and strategies, and also skills that you need to teach your kids to be able to be a super student. And then I think I said we were going to give this to all your listeners if they're interested. This is a survival guide for parents, part 1. And so we'll try to get that up. We do have part 2 and part 3, and we're working on a couple other projects that have to do with parenting and cyber safety and so on. We're just having a lot of fun with this whole thing.
Awesome. I love that. Well, last few questions for you here. The last little bit of the episode, the last few minutes, I like to spend it in what I call the dad zone, which the listeners tell me is their
Okay.
favorite part of every conversation. So we're gonna switch over to the dad zone. It's some 4 quick questions. Well, 3 quick ones, 1 not so quick one, and then we're gonna close this thing out. Into the dad zone we go. So the first question here in the dad zone is, who are 3 people, dead or alive, that you would invite to a dinner party? 3 people, dead or alive,
Did you
that
say
you would
dinner
invite to a
party?
dinner party. Yep.
Oh, it has to be obviously Christ, although I'd like to wash his feet. And then, some of the apostles, they're really, Paul was an exciting person. I would have loved to talk with him. Peter would have been wonderful to talk about him. Would be exciting. And to be honest with you, my own father, we talk about difficult lives and so on. I miss him. He's died about 10 years ago. He was terrible, had a terrible life. Terrible, terrible, terrible. And you talk about bounce back and being able to give and be selfless. I asked him once, I said, Dad, I don't understand the things you went through, your life and everything. And how is it that you're the kind of person you are? He said, John, I just did to you what was never done to me. Now, that was something that stuck with me. I did to you and your sisters and brothers just what never was done to me. So there's insight for you, okay? But again, he accepted Christ soon after he was married, and then I came along, and I was living in that kind of environment. So he was on fire for Jesus Christ. So I'm the recipient of that blessing.
Amazing.
Yeah,
What is
that
your
would be a nice dinner.
what is your guilty pleasure food?
Pizza.
Love it. Speaking of pizza,
I love pizza.
speaking of pizza here, the
Marco
most
Pizza.
nice. The most controversial question of the Young Dad podcast and Young Dad podcast history, something that this podcast is founded on. The one question that's lasted through 200, and this will be 49 episodes ish, somewhere along that line. Does pineapple
Okay.
go on pizza?
Yes. Sure it
Interesting.
does.
Interesting.
Sure it does. Now, if you don't like pineapple, I wouldn't do it. But yeah,
Fair.
absolutely.
What is one piece of advice that you would give to a young parent or a young father specifically? Let's say he's aged 18 to 2 years old, so he's real young, just had his first kid. What is one piece of advice that you would give
Right.
him?
Okay. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not to your understanding. Acknowledge him in all your ways, and he will direct your path. That's it. Proverbs 3, 4, and 5.
Yes, that's a great one. Well, John, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate you sharing your passion for all the things, for parenting, for education, for legacy building, for Christ, and just having the conversation with me today. It was really fun. I didn't know where it was going to end up, but I think we got to all the things we were supposed to get to today. I love how your wisdom is rooted in decades of service for your family, for other families, for other children, and it truly shines through your work with all your books, your creations, and of course in the conversation with you today, and truly shows in your heart as well. So our listeners, don't forget to check out all those books and materials that John showed you just a little bit ago. The Power of Parenting, which comes out this fall, as well as the other books as well, How to Survive Parenting, Survival Guide, as well as the other tools and materials that we'll link for you guys in the show notes as well. And until next time, make sure you go and do all the things that you can do to show your love for the podcast. This is a podcast. You listen to plenty of them. You know how to support it. If you haven't done the simple things, leave 5 stars, leave a review, subscribe over on YouTube. Just do it real quick. It's not going to hurt you. It's not going to kill you just to subscribe. You already are subscribed to so many other random things on YouTube. Just add one more to the list. Plus, this is Young Dad Podcast, so it's going to show at the very end of the list anyway. So you would have to put some effort in to go and see a video. So just do it there. Helps a ton, helps more than you know. And make sure to head over to youngdadpod.com. You can find all the things there that I'm doing with the podcast, every new episode, resources. Every new episode does come out with a free activity guide that you can download. So there's always free stuff over there, stuff I'm always adding as well for you guys to do with your kids, with your families at home that really can help reinforce some of the things that we talk about in each episode. And like John said, we are going to work behind the scenes a little bit to get you guys that part one of the survival guide to my listeners, which will be attached to this episode when it comes out. So survival guide for parents part one, we're going to attach a way for you guys to get that for you guys. John's very generous in that way for you guys. So I think that's all the business. That's all the things. We'll see you next time right here on the Young Dad Podcast for what I believe will be episode 250. So cheers and many more after that. Take care, guys. Bye bye. Bye bye.